Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we're going to be going over the latest that's been going on in the Middle East, especially with the strikes from the U.S. on Iraqi and Syrian posts that are tied to the killing of the soldiers that were in Tower 22. So, but before that, it's really important to subscribe to my channel so you can get the latest and greatest on international policy. All right, so we're going to start with the Muppet Show and the Swedish chef. So we understand foreign policy. I am sure that the people that you listen to on YouTube don't do such an in-depth analysis of international affairs as Dr. Paul Cottrell does on PNN. So let's start with the Muppet Show.
You can learn my sturdy hockey party. Okay, he who boom the sturdy doggy into the party. Hello? Oh, he kommer för dåligt. Come on, sturdy. Who? My dog, you twit. Dog? Yes. Oh, the dog is in the party. No, he got the dog. Oh, you... Stand him. Why doesn't he go back to what he was doing before he became a chef? What was that? Nothing.
You won't get as important of a in-depth analysis on international affairs as you just saw there. That's how our Pentagon works, like the Swedish chef on the Muppet Show.
And Iran have played this sort of courtly game with each other, where the Iranians try to twist the American tail, but they've never wanted a more general regional war because they would lose it.
We'll talk about the piece that you've written for the Sunday Times in a moment, because it is a really interesting look at the relationship between Iran and the United States. But I'm interested, first of all, to get your response to these third joint strikes between the US and the UK on Houthi rebels in Yemen. I mean, presumably you were expecting further strikes.
Yes, it was inevitable that the campaign against the Houthis' attacks on shipping would go on. Whether it will be successful or not, they do seem to have had a sort of containment role, because the Houthis have not launched the sort of attacks that they might have and they would have liked to. So I would have expected that to go on. It's interesting that Britain's having not very much to do with attacks in Iraq and Syria. The campaign of the United States against Iran directly, the thing that started a couple of months ago. So Britain is in for the joint campaign against Houthis closing the Red Sea, but not sharing the broader campaign at the moment anyway, against Iranian-inspired attacks against American forces.
Do you think the US strategy is right at the moment?
I'm not sure there's anything else they can do. Certainly in terms of the Houthis, you can't allow a group like the Houthis simply to hold the world economy to ransom for the next 2 or 3 years, which is what they would do if no action was taken. In the action that the United States is taking against Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria, again, they're responding to the fact that they've been attacked more than 170 times now since the 7th of October. And they feel as if they have
My name is Lulu LaFortune. I'm a furniture designer in Los Angeles, and for the last 5 years, Squarespace has helped me seamlessly build my business.
And they feel as if they have to do something. There's no scope for negotiation in this. Although negotiations are going on all the time, we can't only rely on negotiation because the Iranians simply say these attacks are nothing to do with us, but all to do with Gaza. We've had no control over these groups. And the Americans say, look, that isn't true. We know that's not true. Don't try and tell us it's true. And so they feel, I think, that they have no alternative. I mean, Biden certainly doesn't want to do this. I mean, Biden needs this crisis in an election year like a hole in the head. But he has almost no other alternatives at the moment other than to try military pressure and then go back to diplomacy. So it's a mix. It's not as if he's not being diplomatic, but he needs some sort of military pressure to convince the Iranians that this will only get worse for them unless they rein in the people who are attacking American forces.
We keep being told this isn't an escalation, but obviously we've now seen strikes in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen. Obviously, there's the challenges of the war in Gaza at the moment and the implications of that. Do you see what's happening at the moment in the region as an escalation?
It's potentially all an escalation because the region is slipping towards a more general conflict. That doesn't say it's definitely going to happen, but it's on that road. On the other hand, what the Americans are trying to do is to restrict their attacks to very specific targets, but lots of them. It's timed its attacks so that it causes minimum loss of life, I think, so far. And it's obviously not going to target inside Iran at the moment. I mean, it might choose to target Iranian naval assets because the Iranian Navy is at sea. I mean, giving information to the Houthis for their attacks on the Red Sea, so that it is possible that the Americans could attack directly Iranian ships, for instance, without actually attacking inside Iran. That would be another big step. But the Americans are trying to make it clear that they are attacking militias who are attacking them. And so they're doing quite a lot to indicate that this is a response, but not a response that is in some way uncontrolled. And so far that they've made it.
So we're telegraphing that our response is controlled and we don't want to escalate this into a larger conflict. So Iran, please stop it. Can you imagine the power dynamics once Iran gets a nuclear weapon? And how that would be the cause of failed international policy by the United States government. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, period. And this is marching right towards that because we are afraid to escalate this. Meanwhile, like I said, the transition between the strength of Jacob and the strength of Esau took place just recently, and it lasts for 6 months. All right, so for the ones that don't know, please listen to my previous video, episode 53 and 52. But there's a tetragrammaton, God's name, that can be permutated. The permutations can be 12 different ways. And the name represents each month, but it also represents the first 12 hours of the day starting at midnight. All right. Tu B'Shvat, which was a holiday that just took place, was the resetting of these permutations of the tetragrammaton of God's name. The first 6 months of these, the first 6 months of these permutations represents the strength of Jacob and the weakening of Esau. All right. So you have February, March, April. It'll peak in April, the strength for Jacob. Then it'll start to wane May, June, and July, but still be relatively stronger than Esau. But then Esau will be stronger when August happens. So August, September, October. October is the strength of Esau. And then Esau will start to wane, but still be relatively stronger than Jacob in September, November, December, and January. All right. And then the flip starts again. But it's related to the permutations of the tetragrammaton. So the iron is hot to strike Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran now. but we're run by a bunch of idiots. The iron is hot. Hit it now. From now to July is the time period. It's best to do all-out operations in April. That's where the most spiritual, metaphysical momentum will be helping us. Going beyond July, there's going to be metaphysical and spiritual resistance. But we're run by a bunch of idiots.
That they can attack more or less anywhere in the region, but they're choosing to attack only the militias and only the facilities of the militias. They're not going for personnel as such. They're trying to destroy the radars, the fixed sites, the storage sites. They're trying to hurt the militias as an indication that this will get worse if you don't think again.
You've written in the Sunday Times today the history between Iran and US over the years. Just remind us about the tensions that have been going on for well over 4 decades.
Yes, I mean, it even goes back to to the earlier crises whereby the Western world, Britain and America primarily, but Britain alongside it, installed the Shah of Iran in Iran. And, I mean, even 20 odd years before the Iranian Revolution. But the revolution of 1979 began as extraordinarily anti-American, anti-Shah, anti-American. And at the very beginning, the Iranian students took 52 hostages in the American embassy, and they held them. That was in the presidency of Jimmy Carter. And Carter tried a rescue mission, the famous Desert One mission of 1980, which went terribly, terribly wrong. And that whole thing was a fiasco. And that Carter always felt cost him the election. And from then on, the United States and Iran have played this sort of.
That's a great insight. I do remember the hostage crisis because that was my first taste of international affairs when I was young, watching Ted Koppel on Nightline. Because Nightline started because of the whole Iran-Contra affair, or not Iran-Contra affair, the Iran hostage crisis. So I remember Nightline, during this time period when it started, and that was kind of like the path of kind of being interested in international affairs, at least with news. Now, the United States government, wrongfully, the White House is always worried about re-election instead of long-term policy for the country, even if it hurts your election. They'll always pick the political expedient solution, and usually when they do that, it costs more down the road and more lives lost, more blood, more it takes longer. It's just harder to deal with. This is what I call kicking the can down the road. This is a problem. Stop worrying about expedience. Stop worrying about political pragmatism. And just get the job done. It'll be so much quicker and so much more cost effective.
Orderly game with each other, where the Iranians try to twist the American tail, but they know they do not want, they've never wanted a more general regional war because they would lose it if they ever went into a regional war. They almost came to grief in the Iraq-Iran war, which is not to do with the United States, but the Iranians were defending themselves against Saddam Hussein, who attacked them just a few months within a year of the Iranian Revolution of 1979. But 1980, he launched an attack on Iran, a smaller country, of course, Iraq. But that war killed over 800, almost 900,000 people over a course of 8 years. And that shocked the Iranian regime. And they've always been wary of general war because of that. But equally, they can't resist the idea that they can, as it were, tweak America's tail. They can fight a war, a sort of guerrilla terrorist war across the region in order to develop their own influence.
And it also suits to some extent, doesn't it?
What about the news conferences that were going on in October and early November? How Hezbollah and the Iranian spokespeople were saying that we have such a surprise for you. Now, I'm sure that they have more in store than just the drone attacks that have hit almost 170 times since October 16th or whatever it was. But Iran and Hezbollah and the spokesperson for Hamas has stated that there is going to be a surprise if the United States gets involved. All right, what is that surprise? All right, Iran has telegraphed aggression. Now it's time to kick ass. And I've noticed that, for the last 24 hours, as I'm watching this stuff, I haven't heard anyone's, mentioning about these spokespeople from Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran telegraphing to the world that the United States, should be worried if they get involved, and that there's going to be a surprise. Well, I wonder what that is. I'm telling you, Iran with unconventional warfare means is very, very, very worrisome. And we should just knock them out now. And hell with the consequences. Because it's going to be worse later.
To have the Americans to criticize, to say that they hate us, because it distracts from the real problems that Iran has at home, with a population who are at times, and it has been quashed to some extent, but at times rising up against them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the Iranian regime is very narrowly based now. It's a theocratic dictatorship. It's very ruthless. I mean, one of the phrases I always have for it is that it is a security service that has a government working for it, rather than a government that has a security service working for it. It's driven by its security forces and by its army. As I think I'll point out in the article, 4 million Iranians live outside Iran, and half of those 4 million live in North America. I mean, people in Iran, young people in Iran, so many of them have links into family and friends who live in the United States. And the influence of Western liberalism can't be suppressed amongst a very young and well-educated, very sophisticated young population. So the Iranians have got a real problem. The Iranian regime's got a problem, and yet every Friday at prayers, they chant "Death to America" every Friday. And so they have to maintain America.
So it's death to America, but we want to telegraph, so we don't want to have a larger war with the Iranians. Okay, Lloyd Austin. See what I mean? We're run by the Muppet Show.
In order to justify so many of their own policies. And of course, everything that goes wrong for them domestically, because Iran is a rich country intrinsically, but they don't run it very well, they don't organize it very well. And so everything that goes wrong, they blame on the outside world. They blame it on America. They blame it on sanctions. So America is an intrinsic part of them staying in power. The fact that they can blame the United States because it's the great Satan, and of course behind the great Satan is the little Satan, who is Britain. They also believe, partly because of the history of the 1950s, that somehow Britain is.
All right. I know that they call us the great Satan, all right? And I don't think that's true. There is some evil aspects to our foreign policy, but I don't think we're the great Satan. Nor do I think that Israel is the little Satan. But even if you did believe that, would you really want to go against Satan? Because he's pretty fucking powerful.
Find so many things that go on in the world because somehow we tell the Americans what to do and the Americans do it. Gosh, if that was only a little bit true.
Absolutely. Michael Clark, it's always good to speak to you. Thank you for your time. He is Professor of Defence Studies at King's College London. He's written an analysis piece for the Sunday Times. You can find it in the World section online now.
All right, let's see what Al Jazeera has to say.
Also a member of the War Cabinet. And he has made it known in the last few days that he might walk away from the government and collapse the government if he were to think that Netanyahu was not entering into a deal because of pressure from the far right-wing members of his government, and also if Netanyahu wants to impose a military rule on Gaza after the end of the war. So right now, Netanyahu really facing huge amounts of pressure. Many people saying that he is in a politically untenable situation, and it's unclear how he's going to navigate all of this. Now, later tonight, there is going to be a meeting of the war cabinet. We expect that they will be discussing what potentially they might hear from Hamas with regards to the deal that has been presented to Hamas.
Mohammed, specifically talking about that potential deal, on Friday, when the cabinet discussed the captive release deal, there were huge disagreements. What might be preventing the Israelis from agreeing to the deal in its current form?
So, Neve, it's very complicated. On the one hand, you have, as we mentioned before, those far right-wing members of the government who have, for weeks now, said that they are adamantly opposed to any kind of a deal that would see the release of potentially thousands of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for those Israeli captives being held in Gaza. That's one big sticking point. Also, you have members of the right who have continued to say that they don't want there to be an end to the war, that if there is a ceasefire, it should only be a limited ceasefire, and that the war must go on until Hamas is eliminated. Now, there have been times when Netanyahu, over the course of the past few days, has reiterated these points. Netanyahu has continued to say that he does not want to see thousands of Palestinians released. In fact, it's being reported in the last hour that at a meeting of the government this morning, that he told the assembled members of the government that he wants to see a similar ratio, which would be like what happened in the previous ceasefire in November. It's very unclear how that would work, because that ratio of Israeli captives for Palestinian prisoners was around 1 to 3. So it doesn't really seem like the math would add up this time around. But this, nonetheless, is what Netanyahu has been suggesting. Netanyahu has also said that he does not want the Israeli army to leave Gaza, and that he does not want to see an end to the war until all those goals are reached. And the primary goal, he says, is the elimination of Hamas. So these are just some of the sticking points we've seen emerge. But at the other hand, you have members of the opposition. You also have some members of the war cabinet who have very publicly stated that, above all else, what needs to be the driving motivation here right now is the release of those Israeli captives being held in Gaza. So it's really all over the map right now. It's unclear what exactly.
Because of the shift of strength, metaphysically, spiritually, to Jacob and away from Esau, do not negotiate for the hostages for a longer-term ceasefire. Destroy Hamas and Hezbollah. Start the negotiations after July. That's the way you do this. Kick ass now. Hit the iron when it's hot. But we'll make a mistake. Israel will make a mistake. The United States will make a mistake. The UK will make a mistake. We'll be trying to placate to the UN and the international players using some Westphalian bullshit. And this thing's going to get worse. Mark my words. I'm not wrong on this.
The war cabinet and the cabinet as a whole would be willing to agree to it. And that's wherein the danger sort of lies for Netanyahu, because he's also facing a lot of societal pressure right now. Just last night, we were at another one of the weekly protests that happened in Tel Aviv, where you have relatives of those captives, and they are putting more pressure on the government because they say the government is not doing enough to secure the release of their loved ones.
Yeah, so a lot of sticking points, a lot of potential red lines. We'll, of course, be back in Israel as that cabinet meeting approaches. But for now, Mohammed Jamdoun in Tel Aviv, many thanks. Okay, well, let's take you.
You know, the key term there is potential red lines. We don't have red lines. It's all bullshit.
In southern Gaza, where Israeli strikes have been targeting areas where thousands of displaced Palestinians are sheltering. Tarek Arizun joins us live from Rafah. And Tarek, as I mentioned there, another round of Israeli airstrikes on the school and on Rafah proper. What more can you tell us?
Yes, Neve, more airstrikes, another bloody day that is full of attacks, especially in the southern part of the Gaza Strip and in an area that's supposed to be as a safe zone for all Palestinians. But right now, taking shelter in Rafah today have been widely attacked by the Israeli forces, where they have earlier today attacked one of the civil cars as they have been moving to their destination. They have been targeted. The entire car was set to fire. And different injuries among Palestinian people have been transported to a major hospital for treatment. And this is not the only attack, by the way. Today we have been seeing a very gradual increase of military strikes on the eastern part of Rafah. Now, this area is supposed to be the main area that there's going to be any possible military ground inclusion. Now, I've been seeing more airstrikes against residential buildings and agricultural farmlands in the southern part of Gaza. And the situation, in fact, even also in Khan Yunis, has been exacerbating as confrontations there on the...
You know, notice, you know, how Al Jazeera is like, they only accentuate the collateral damage. They never, ever, ever tell you and how many Hamas combatants have been targeted or killed or wounded. I'll tell you, the bias with these international news organizations is amazing. And you see it on both sides, all right? But it's really prevalent with Al Jazeera. All right.
Take full control over the city of Khan Yunis, the second largest city in the territory.
And Tarek, that is the picture, as you say, in the south. But what about the situation in the north now, especially around Gaza City?
Yes, the northern part of Gaza Strip witnesses more complication in terms of the humanitarian and medical situation, and also the security one, especially that the Israeli forces had renewed having clashing and fighting with the Palestinian fighters there, despite the previous announcement that they managed to militarily control the city there. But we have been seeing more compact fighting and close contact fighting between the Palestinian fighters and the Israeli soldiers in the key central neighborhoods of Gaza City. As people there, as we have been contacting them, we have been told that battles there are raging and people are unable to walk in a very free way in the streets of Gaza City, simply because the Israeli military is using the quadcopter drones to attack people who are walking on the streets, despite the unprecedented deterioration and health crisis that unfolding the majority of sectors inside the northern part of Gaza. As eyewitnesses there on the ground have been saying, that there is an accelerated rate of blowing up of residential buildings in northern Gaza, where the Israeli forces are blowing up all residential houses in areas of operations as part of the progressive systematic environment that had been created in the northern part of Gaza, which completely makes the life there uninhabitable.
An accelerated rate of destruction. Tarek, many thanks for that. Tarek Abu Azoon, live for us in Rafah. Now, Israeli forces have targeted an area in southern Lebanon where a funeral was taking place for two fighters of the Amal armed group. Hundreds were attending the funeral in the town of Blida when an Israeli missile hit near the cemetery. The two fighters were killed in an Israeli strike on Friday. The Amal group is allied with Hezbollah but hasn't announced any attack on Israel since cross-border violence began 4 months ago. Houthi fighters have pledged to respond after the US and the UK carried out another wave of airstrikes in Yemen. The US-led coalition says it hit 36 targets and 13 locations. The Houthis say sites in 6 provinces were hit, including the capital, Sana'a. The coalition says...
We have the most techy, the most high sophisticated weaponry on the planet, the most firepower on the planet, and we can't control this choke point in the Red Sea. That's because we have failed leaders in the Pentagon and the White House. And that's why I say that our foreign policy is like the Muppet Show.
Send a clear message to the Iran-backed group condemning its attacks on ships in the Red Sea. The Houthis' military spokesperson says the strikes will not deter them from supporting Palestinians in Gaza. On Friday, the US conducted dozens of airstrikes on Iraq and Syria, targeting groups linked to Iran. Mohammed Al-Athab has more from the Yemeni capital, Sana'a.
The military spokesperson for the Houthi Al-Sana group, Brigadier General Yahya Syria, announced today Sunday that the American-British coalition carried out 48 airstrikes over the past hours, targeting several Yemeni governorates. According to Syria statements, the airstrikes targeted the capital Sana'a and the governorates of Sana'a. Also, they have targeted Hudayda, Ta'az, Al-Bayda, Hajja, and Sada. Syria explained that the 13 airstrikes targeted the capital Sana'a and its governorates. Also, 9 airstrikes targeted Hudayda, 11 strikes targeted Ta'az, 7 airstrikes targeted Al-Bayda, and also another 7 airstrikes targeted Hajja, in addition to 1 airstrike on the eastern side of Sada. Syria affirmed that these airstrikes will not deter them from supporting their Palestinian people in Gaza, stressing that they will not
Explosions in Iraq and Syria overnight. Today, the US
strikes, according to his words. In response to these airstrikes, which Houthi leader Ali al-Fahouk described as an open war, a Houthi political council, also member of the political council, Mohammed al-Bukhaiti, warned that the American-British escalation will be met with another escalation from their side. He stressed that these airstrikes will not deter them as well from continuing to support Gaza until the Israeli aggression ends and the siege is lifted. The group states in its statements that its decision supported by hundreds of thousands of Yemenis who come out weekly and daily to call for more operations and even to demand opening land crossings to reach the occupied territories to support their brothers again there in Gaza against what they describe as Israeli genocide against people of Gaza and Palestine.
Funerals have taken place in Baghdad for the victims of those US airstrikes in Iraq. The government declared 3 days of mourning after at least 16 people, including civilians, were killed. The US airstrikes were in response to a drone attack that killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan last week. The leader of
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to drop into Times Radio. I wanted to get this was published 2 days ago.
Influence in neighboring states. In Iraq, probably if you ask me, what's the most powerful state in Iraq today, I would say Iran. What's the most powerful state in Syria today is Iran. What's the most powerful state in Lebanon is Iran. In Yemen as well. This tells you how these armed groups have really and given Iran power multiplier in the region.
It's not just looking at it from a military or government point of view. It is this division between Shia and Sunni, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. This is a religious conflict that is brewing. And then you got the Jewish constituency wrapped up in this. Sunni, Shia, Jewish. That you have this trifecta that's going on.
They're expanding its influence. Also, these armed groups provide the Iranian Republic with another layer of security.
Hello and welcome to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. Today we are talking.
And their show, Times Radio, is sometimes pretty good. So let me just do a commercial because this is PNN. And, where do you get the Muppet Show? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description. And get my toothpaste. It has no fluoride. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to get. It's way better than Alex Jones's toothpaste that he sells. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize pathogens, reduce that gum irritation and gingivitis. And by doing this on a regular basis and having good oral hygiene, what's going to happen is that you are reducing your chances of cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. All right. There is a correlation between oral hygiene and cardiovascular health. All right. On top of that, you take my liquid nano silver products like Max 35 and Max 14 and you swish it in your mouth, and that's neutralizing pathogens on top of it. Maybe in the morning or in the evening. Take a teaspoon of that and then swallow it. So taking the toothpaste and the Max 35 or Max 14 is synergistic. Now, you're going to take advice about how to get your health in order and slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system by my show or by InfoWars. I'm sure I know a lot more about medicine than Alex Jones. So please, also go to my store and get the structural nano silver gel. You rub it on your hands, it'll stay active for 5 hours, it'll neutralize pathogens. You can put it around your mouth, you can put it around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils, around your ears, around your eyes. It'll stay active for 5 hours. You can put it on a cut, it'll help to heal the cut because it's neutralizing pathogens. You can put it on minor burns and abrasions, you can put it on acne, you can put it on your skin even if you don't have a problem. You put it on there overnight, and what happens is that it'll start to tighten the skin, you'll notice, and that your skin will be cleared. Right? And if you couple that with some other things like the collagen I offer, the vitamin C, you drink 64 ounces of filtered water throughout the day, you take the C60 and you take the resveratrol, you're going to actually have better skin. I'm sure you didn't hear that from Alex Jones. You know why? Because Dr. Paul Cottrell is a lot smarter than Alex Jones.
To Fawaz Gerges, Professor of International Relations at the London School of Economics and Political Science. He holds the Emirates Professorship in Contemporary Middle East Studies and has taught at Oxford, Harvard, and Columbia universities. Fawaz is a well-known commentator and writer on the Middle East, and his latest book is What Really Went Wrong: The West and the Failure of Democracy in the Middle East. Fawaz, great to have you on Frontline. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
As we speak, Fawaz, the US has yet to retaliate for the killing of 3 US soldiers in a small military outpost close to the Syrian border in Jordan. Can you tell us more about Kataib Hezbollah, the militant group being held responsible?
Well, Kataib Hezbollah, or the Brigades of Hezbollah, is an armed Iraqi group supported militarily and financially by Iran. It's a very pro-Iranian group. And I think what your audience need to know is that Kataib Hezbollah has been engaged in skirmishes and in fighting with the United States for the past few years. It was the Trump administration that ordered the killing of its top leader with the Iranian general Soleimani in Iraq. And the United States has been retaliating and against some of Kataib Hezbollah attacks in Iraq. So this is not just a one-time off. You have a very prolonged confrontation between Kataib Hezbollah, the brigades of Hezbollah, and the United States. And if you tell me what's the overarching goal of Kataib Hezbollah, would be the expulsion of American forces from Iraq. Its goal is to really increase the costs of the American footprint in Iraq, and this is the same goal of Iran as well.
Yeah, I'll ask you a little bit more about the killing, that assassination, a little later on, but just wanted to ask you a little bit more.
Israel does not limit the amount of humanitarian aid that can enter Gaza. Since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, over 10,000 trucks of humanitarian aid have entered Gaza, carrying almost 123,000 tons of food, hundreds of water trucks, 14,000 tons of medical supplies.
But just wanted to ask you a little bit more.
That was just a commercial, from probably the Israeli government. But, the issue here is that even on Al Jazeera, they don't accentuate any of the positive that is happening in terms of trying to get aid in and, trying to minimize the collateral damage. This is war. There's going to be collateral damage. And oh, by the way, the citizens of Gaza should have made sure that Hamas wasn't in power. But they didn't care. They didn't care enough. And now they're dealing with the consequences. There are consequences for inaction or just losing on the battlefield. If you don't hold the line, don't be surprised if there are consequences. If you are a pacifist, don't be surprised if there are consequences for being a pacifist. And that includes the Americans. There's so many Americans that are pacifists today. And believe me, there will be consequences of dealing with your security, your ability to have the lifestyle that you're used to, your financial security, your military security, and the security of your civil liberties because of being a pacifist.
Hezbollah. It's been around since 2023, as I understand it, so relatively new. Why did it actually form?
Well, I mean, you have Hezbollah. Kataib Hezbollah is not the only armed group in Iraq. You have almost a dozen armed groups, and they mostly are supported by Iran. They are trained by Iran, but they also, of course, they have their own, internal goals as well, which is really the promotion of Shia interests in the country itself. I think what we need to take into account is that the American invasion and occupation of Iraq in 2003, almost 20 years now. I mean, the anniversary was in March 2003. Really, and also the American invasion and occupation of Afghanistan turned Iraq into a regional superpower. Since 2005, 2006, Iran has created a network of allies, militias, and armed groups, not just in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria, and now in Yemen, that basically they are power multipliers for Iran, and they also allow Iran to expand its interest in the neighboring countries. So its very existence is designed not only to promote Iranian influence and power in Iraq, but also to force the Americans out of Iraq, because they believe that the United States is basically has done a great deal of damage to Iraq over the past 20 years or so.
What is Iran's end goal?
Well, if you think of Iran, Iran has a vision of itself as a regional pivotal power, as a regional superpower. Iran is a state, is a state, is a state. I mean, that's what we define it in international relations. Is a state.
Perhaps international relations theoretical framework or their lens of understanding the situation. Iran is a theocracy. There is a change of power that is going on that is tied to the Temple Mount in this battle between Judaism and Islam, and the battle between Islam and Islam. I'm telling you, the things that are happening cannot be really governed really well based on some of the theoretical concepts and foundations in international policy. Also, look at what's going on with artificial intelligence and the decoupling between labor and capital. We don't have economic theories to be able to explain where this is going. Nobody does. Do you understand what I'm just saying? It's just that a system has changed. Social systems have changed. And some of the theoretical frameworks to understand where we were has now broken down because of artificial intelligence dealing with the financial aspects to the decoupling of the society and all the problems that could happen, especially in an indebted society. And how the change of the Temple Mount and that power dynamic in Israel will change that whole region. A little country like Israel is going to radically change the Middle East. There's no theoretical framework to go based on. It's a change. There is a phase shift that has taken place, a chaotic event in both arenas. This clown he won't be able to explain it. And by the time it already happens, then the historians come in and try to explain it. And this is the reason why you come to my channel, to be right at the very edge, as this thing is emerging. While everyone else is a historian. Just look at what happened with the last crisis. Everyone's a historian now.
it sees vacuum, it feels this particular vacuum, whether you're talking about the United States or whether you're talking, Iran has an idea, a worldview, that it has the natural right to be a major player in the region. And that's why when the United States invaded Afghanistan and Iraq and the US global war on terror, I mean, vast security vacuums were established in the region. And what Iran has really been trying to do, I would have done the same thing as a state. What Iran has been trying to do is to fill the vacuum created by the chaos and the wars, as a result of the American invasion and occupations of Afghanistan and Iraq, and then the turmoil in the region. It's maximized state interest. I mean, I think people say, oh, Iran is a Shia-dominated state. Well, whether it's a Shia-dominated state or whether it's a Sunni-dominated state, Iran is a state that promotes and expands its influence near and wide. And that's really what Iran has been doing in the past 20 years or so.
You mentioned that the many allied militias or proxies that Iran has in the countries such as Lebanon, Syria, Yemen and Gaza, part of this axis of resistance. How many groups are we talking about? And do they have one thing in common, or do they just align on certain geopolitical aims, or perhaps domestic aims?
Stop being boring! Very boring browsers!
Kataib Hezbollah released a statement in the past 24 hours. And the statement says that, in fact, Iran has been trying to persuade Kataib Hezbollah not to escalate the confrontation with the United States in Iran. The report released by the Kataib Hezbollah, what they're trying to say is that while they are pro-Iranians, while they are armed and supported by Iran, they have their own interests, their own worldview, their own goals. And I think what I'm trying to say is that if we look at Hezbollah in Lebanon and Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq and the Houthis in Yemen, and we think somehow they take direct order from Iran, this is misleading. This is false. In fact, the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, which really helps to train and guide Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, has made it very clear. He said it, he has repeatedly said, there is no centralized decision-making. The so-called axis of resistance in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, they don't take direct orders from Iran. They coordinate, they consult, but at the end of the day, they also have their own interest inside their countries. And in the report, in the release by the Kataib Hezbollah, in the past, 24 hours or so, it says, in fact, our brothers in Iran really do not really want to attack the Americans inside Iraq itself, but we basically have our own interest. And I'm paraphrasing and what the report says.
And do you believe that statement?
Look, I have no doubts in my mind, and I could be wrong, that even if Iran, the Iranian leadership, tells the Houthis in Yemen or Hezbollah in Lebanon, don't show solidarity with the Palestinians, they would not listen to Iran. That is what we need to understand, and this is really the misleading narrative in the West, very superficial, I'm sorry to say, is that somehow we think that Iran calls the shots, that Iran orders Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen or Kataib Hezbollah to do its own bidding. That's not how it works. Iran has tremendous influence. Iran exercises considerable influence over its network of allies, armed groups. But at the end of the day, certain questions like Palestine and the war in Gaza resonate deeply, in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Syria, in Jordan, in Egypt. I mean, but what the big question is, you have weak, fragile states. So, I mean, think of what we're talking about, Kataib Hezbollah. You have been asking me for the past 5 minutes about Qatar, Hezbollah, and Iraq. You have not asked me a question, where is the Iraqi government? This is sadly, it's not a sovereign government. A government does not really have a monopoly on the use of force, as Max Weber, the German sociologist, would say, does not have any sovereignty. In fact, the Americans and the various armed groups in Iraq, they're fighting a war. Iraq, is a battlefield where the Iraqi state really is a passive actor. In fact, it was the Iraqi prime minister, al-Sudani. He met after, the attacks against the Americans in Jordan, and he told Qatar, Hezbollah, and the other groups, he would resign. He said he would resign unless they cease their attacks. He said, you're making a fool of me, a fool of Iraq. So I think it's a combination of pressure by al-Sudani, who's also part of the axis of resistance, politically, and Iran, that has brought about this recalibration about that Qatar, Hezbollah will no longer really target Americans in Iraq in the near future.
And so far, as we're actually speaking,
let's do another commercial for PNN. Please go to my store and get the liquid structural nanosilver to neutralize pathogens. You swish it in your mouth, you gargle with it, you swallow it. All right, it's synergistic with the toothpaste. And that way you're bringing down that pathogenic load. All right, so go to my store, get the Health Max 14 or Health Max 35 and take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. Should be part of your daily anti-aging protocol. Another part of your daily anti-aging protocol should be C60. I sell an avocado oil and coconut oil, either in 2 ounce, 4 ounce, or 8 ounce configuration. You take a teaspoon of this a day, it'll soak up those free radicals. And by soaking up those free radicals, you're going to have less cellular damage and you're going to have better mitochondrial health. You'll have more ATP, you'll have better activity within that cell, and you'll slow down the aging process. People literally age through rusting, all right, through oxidation, oxidative stress. All right, so please take my advice, go to my store, the-studio-readytopick.com, and get the C60 to be able to soak up those free radicals. It's a very strong antioxidant. It's part of my anti-aging protocol. The last pillar of the 3-pillar system for the anti-aging protocol, the core of it, is to bring down inflammation. You do that by taking ashwagandha root. This will help to control your blood glucose levels and to bring down that inflammatory response at the vascular level. And in turmeric, which is known to bring down inflammation, but also is a strong antioxidant. So please take them together. All right, this is part of the 3rd pillar of my anti-aging protocol. Bring down inflammation, bring down the free radicals, and neutralize pathogens. All right, those together is the core of the anti-aging protocol. And then you add stuff to it, like the toothpaste and the probiotic. All right, I have a great probiotic. I have it in a capsule, which is this one. I also have it in a powder form by Boomer. Some people prefer the powder and mix it with their food. Some people prefer just the ease of just using a capsule. But either way, you need to get a good gut biome. By having a proper good gut biome, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to absorb nutrients better. You're going to have more consistent stools, and you're going to have a better communication between your gut and your liver. There's a lot of metabolism that's taking place. And there's certain things that the bacteria in your gut do to help for your health. But if you have the wrong type of bacteria, or if you have the wrong percentage of certain types of bacteria, then you will start to have problems. So please take my advice, make sure that you eat properly, stay away from GMO, drink filtered water, and take a good probiotic. Now we're going to go back to the news. This is PNN covering the Muppet Show.
Because they have suspended any tax and said they have done so. Just to go back to Iran's influence, though, I suppose one of the most useful things, though, for Iran is this plausible deniability that it can have. It can claim to disassociate itself from the actions of these militias, even though it may sometimes serve its aims. Can Iran ever be held to account, or should it be?
Well, first of all, Iran has made it very clear that they have no connection with the attack on the Americans in Jordan that killed 3 Americans and injured about 40 American soldiers. They said, we did not give the orders. Qatar Hezbollah said so as well, that I don't think Qatar Hezbollah took direct orders from Iran to attack the Americans. In fact, Iran has repeatedly, the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, has repeatedly said he does not really want war with the Americans. The Americans, the intelligence assessment of the United States, the combined intelligence assessment, also has reached a conclusion that Iran does not really want war with the United States, that Iran is not really telling its allies, go and bomb the Americans.
Yes.
What Iran is trying to do, again, is to increase the costs for America's, preponderant blind support for Israel in Gaza. It wants a ceasefire in Gaza. They all want a ceasefire in Gaza. But they're trying to really open different fronts in order to really make life very difficult for the Americans. So at the end of the day, you ask me whether Iran can be held accountable. I mean, Iran provides the arms. Iran provides the training. Iran provides the money. But at the end of the day, it is the predicament in international relations. The US President Joe Biden now has to walk a fine line between retaliation and without escalation. A direct attack on Iran, as the Iranian leadership has made it very clear, would probably trigger retaliation by Iran against American bases, as it happened after President Trump assassinated General Soleimani, the second most important, powerful man in Iran.
Yeah, that happened just over 4 years ago. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, he was described as the mastermind behind Iran's proxy armies. How did he build those? I mean, do you accept that? And how did he build those armies, and what effect did his death have?
Very much. I mean, Soleimani.
Hi, I'm Zoe Gong. As a traditional Chinese medicine chef and food therapist, I love using Squarespace to share my recipes and wellness tips and to accept appointments.
Very much. I mean, Soleimani literally, in Iran, he was seen as the second most important man after Ali Khamenei. Ali Khamenei is the supreme leader, is the commander-in-chief. And Soleimani really played a significant role, not only in guiding and training and funding. He himself took part in the fighting in Syria against ISIS, the Islamic State. I mean, he himself was, photographed on the battlefield. In fact, some of his lieutenants were terrified that he basically was too close to, the fire. In Syria, he really, Soleimani played a key role in saving the Syrian president, Assad. Soleimani played a major role in turning Hezbollah in Lebanon into a regional power. I mean, Hezbollah now is really not just a Lebanese militia. Hezbollah is a regional power, and also played a major role in creating and guiding and mentoring and arming and training the various armed groups in Iraq. His death left huge vacuum. But the reality is, when you have networks, when you have groups, armed groups, when you have, so the show goes on. Unfortunately, the death of one man or two men or would not change the calculation, the complexity of the landscape that exists in the region. Iran now has major influence in neighboring states. In Iraq, probably, if you ask me, what's the most powerful state in Iraq today, I would say Iran. What's the most powerful state in Syria today is Iran. What's the most powerful state in Lebanon is Iran. In Yemen as well. This tells you how these armed groups have really and given Iran power multiplier in the region. Not only in terms of expanding its influence, also these armed groups provide the Iranian Republic with another layer of security. Any attack on Iran by the United States could trigger attacks by its allies, Hezbollah in Lebanon and in the region. So this really creates quite a dilemma for the Americans that if they decide, or the Israelis if they decide to take Iran head on.
It was suggested to me by an analyst I was speaking to this week that the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are a sign of the Houthis' growing desire to assert themselves on the world stage. Do you think we are going to see more non-state actors and increasingly better armed non-state actors posing a direct threat to the US and its allies?
Well, I mean, let's take a bigger picture here. I mean, since really 2001. I mean, think what Al-Qaeda had done in the past 20 years or so. It really, it not only changed American politics, it transformed world politics. Just to give you an idea, here you have Al-Qaeda never numbered more than 1,500 fighters. 1,500 fighters. The attack on the United States on 9/11, think of what it did. The so-called America's war on terror. We estimate that the United States spent about, not me, I mean, economists at Brown's University, Watson Institute at Brown's University, and the study just came out a few months ago called The Costs of War. 100 specialists and scholars and economists calculated the cost of the US global war on terror after Al-Qaeda's attack. The United States has spent $8 trillion in direct and indirect costs. 8 trillions, not billions. That is every billion, for your listeners, every trillion has 1,000 billion. We estimate that 4 million people have died. 4 million have died as a result of the US war on terror in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Pakistan, directly and indirectly. 20 million refugees. So think of Al-Qaeda as a non-state actor, what this tiny Al-Qaeda has been able to do to the international system, the most powerful state in the world, not to mention ISIS. So yeah, I think what we're seeing in international relations, even though the state remains the major organization in the international system, really asymmetrical warfare and non-state actors are changing the structure of international relations. I mean, think of Hezbollah. Hezbollah can take on Israel and fight a war for a couple of years and inflict major damage on Israel. And Israel knows this, as the Houthis as well. I mean, think of the damage they have done since November to world trade and the world economy. They could really bring about a recession. 30–40% of commercial shipping basically has been affected. Think of what ISIS has done. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of casualties. So I think when we think of international relations, this is not about politics. I think we need to take into account not only the nature of asymmetrical warfare, but the state itself is no longer really the only sole unit in international relations. Non-state actors, in particular, in states that really face security dilemmas, don't really have a monopoly on the use of force, really play a major role in regional politics and international relations.
And in that light, you mentioned earlier that the US finds itself in a difficult position, knowing how to respond to the killing of these 3 soldiers. What do you think is the correct way or the best way for the US to respond, the most effective way to send a message without provoking things further?
Well, look, all choices, all scenarios have costs and consequences. So if President Biden decides to attack Hezbollah and the Iraqi militias, the Republicans are going to scream coward. They have already said you're a coward. And you have presidential elections here in the United States. So President Biden has to take into account the domestic calculation. If President Biden decides to go after Iran itself, he has to take into account that his actions could really bring about the opposite, the reverse result of what he intends, that escalation. He has made it very clear.
The thing is this is why I keep on saying, don't worry about the political expediency. Don't look at for some pragmatic solution. Just get the job done. We didn't get the job done in the Middle East. And like the guy said, we spent $8 trillion. They didn't get much out of it. The United States needs to kick some ass. But we got a woke military.
seek a wider war in the region. In fact, America's strategy since the 7th of October is to prevent the escalation, the expansion of the war in Gaza. I mean, if you ask me what needs to be done, to me as an academic and as a person, I really know exactly what needs to be done. If you want the escalation, everyone, even our Secretary of State, David Cameron, our Foreign Secretary, says we need the escalation. Okay,
this is going to be. I'm going to let him talk, but I'm willing to bet he's going to use some sort of Westphalian logic to try to de-escalate this.
Important action. What's the most important decision that all of us could do to bring about the escalation? Not another attack on the Houthis, not 10 attacks against Qatar Hezbollah. It's simply trying to get a ceasefire, a peace ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, trying to end the catastrophic humanitarian situation that's unfolding in Gaza. Hardly any one of us talks about this anymore. The most important action that freezes all the conflicts in the region is basically bring about an end to the war in Gaza.
Think about the word they use, freeze. It doesn't mean eliminate. Freeze the conflict. It doesn't eliminate the conflict. It freezes it. But eventually something will thaw out and eventually it'll ramp up again. This is what happened in 2006. This is what happened in 2009. This is what happened in 2016. And this is what happened on October 7th. The Israelis didn't go full out. Now, there are many reasons why. Internal politics, politics with the United States, Obama wasn't willing to support. We have a problem. And you can't just freeze it so it can thaw out again. It is eliminate the problem. And that means an all-out war and a rebalancing of that area. It's going to be a strengthening of Saudi Arabia, the destruction of Iran, the destruction of Hezbollah, the destruction of Hamas, the expulsion of Palestinians from the West Bank, the territory of Israel growing into the West Bank and in the northern front, into parts of Syria and in parts of Lebanon, and parts of Jordan. That's when this is going to reset. And it won't be a freeze anymore. It will be a new era. And this is where this whole Westphalian idea is, well, we're going to have to slow down the conflict because we're just going to have to, legitimize the Palestinians' claim to the land. Even though this isn't about really land, it's more about this whole religious tension between Jacob and Esau, the children of Israel, and many parts of the Islamic world. This is the battle. This is the big battle royale. And Westphalian politics just tries to put a lid on it, try to freeze it, and hope that down the road we'll have a better solution. But each time it gets worse. Each time more killing. Each time it's more expensive. Time to get it over with now. No freezing. Just burn it all up.
The Houthis in Yemen, all the armed groups in Iraq say, once the guns fall silent in Gaza, we stop our basically attacks against American bases and commercial ships. To me, we have to take this into account. When we talk about choices, we should not all think and groupthink. Oh, what military action can we take to establish deterrence or to re-establish deterrence? Deterrence has failed. The United States strategy of deterrence has failed. The Houthis continue to attack. In fact, in the past 24 hours, dozens of attacks have taken place in Yemen and the Red Sea. American ships and American bases continue to be attacked. There is an open front between Hezbollah in Lebanon and Israel that could really escalate into another major front. So what can be done? I think this is why the Britain roles. I'm really happy that David Cameron is back I am, because he's an adult. He's not polemical, he's not rhetorical, he's not an ideologue, a demagogue like some people I'm not going to mention. He knows what needs to be done. And what needs to be done is not only focus on, I mean, I don't like the term sustainable ceasefire because it does not really go far enough for me. I want a permanent
sustainable ceasefire seems awfully like freeze the situation.
Because of the politics, because I'm concerned about, as you know, now the number of Palestinians killed so far now is 27,000 Palestinians today, and 66,000 injured. Not to mention, you have 1.9, actually 2 million Palestinians who are displaced. I mean, mass displacement of Palestinians. If you ask me, and I really say it based on what I know, even 50 American attacks, even 100 American attacks against the Houthis and Hezbollah, Hezbollah in Lebanon will not bring about de-escalation. In fact, it will bring about escalation rather than de-escalation. So the question, the choice facing the US president is not easy at all. And I'm glad I'm not part of his team, because his team is agonizing over how to respond, how to reestablish the deterrence that has failed.
And who knows, Fawaz, the situation between Gaza and Israel may not be resolved when we have a new US president, and that could be Donald Trump.
Before we go to Donald Trump, this is PNN, and I need to go to commercial, because who else is going to give you the Muppet Show? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video and all my videos, and get the vitamin C with magnesium. All right, this will help to boost up your immune system, but not just that. It'll also help to improve your skin. Vitamin C helps the cross-linking of collagen, all right, to build up that dermal layer. So it's really important. Make sure you drink 64 ounces of filtered water. Get rid of fluoride. Fluoride is very bad for you. Let me repeat it. Fluoride is bad for you. Drink filtered water and take vitamin C. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose of it. Resveratrol. It's also a strong antioxidant, and it'll get rid of senescent cells. It's part of the anti-aging protocol. Please go to my store and get the resveratrol. I also have Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will help you focus at work, focus on schooling if you're in school, and even if you're retired, to improve your cognitive ability, take Clarity Factor. Why? Because what that will do is it'll help to get those neurons firing. And when you have firing neurons, you're going to have better dendritic connections, and you're going to have better memory, and your speed of thinking and your cognition will be quicker and more robust. Take Clarity Factor every day. I take it twice a day, actually. I take it in the morning and in the mid-afternoon. But take it every day as part of an anti-aging protocol so you can focus, right? It will get rid of that brain fog, and it'll keep those dendritic connections. And it's synergistic with C60, because C60 soaks up the free radicals that are in your neurons and improve your mitochondrial health. The mitochondrial health in your neurons produces the ATP to be able to release those neurotransmitters. If you have less ATP, you have less neurotransmission, and then the dendrites start to recede, and hence you age mentally. Take Clarity Factor, take C60, and it's going to slow down that loss of mental acuity. All right? Take my advice. Follow my protocol, and you're going to see major benefits in a very short amount of time. And it's compounding. If you do this over time, you're going to notice that there are added benefits, this compounding effect. And you look at yourself that's on this protocol versus someone that's not, and you're aging slower versus the person that's not on the protocol. And you'll have more energy, you'll be healthier, you'll be more vibrant. It's about proper supplementation, proper diet, proper exercise, proper balancing, and challenging your brain, getting the proper sleep. I have a supplement on my store called Good Night Formula. You take goodnight formula every day, and what will happen is you'll go into this 3-cycle REM sleep. By going into 3-cycle REM sleep, you're going to be more well rested when you wake up. You're going to have consolidation of memory, so your memory will improve. You'll have more mental acuity, and not just that, you're going to be detoxifying your body better. Take my advice or don't take my advice. It's up to you. But I have some very, very high quality concepts that if you follow and you purchase the very high quality supplements that I have, you're going to be doing better. And also take my D3, my vitamin D3. It helps to absorb calcium, but not just that, it is a gene expression cofactor. You need vitamin D for proper cellular gene expression. If you're low on D3, you're not going to have the cellular gene expression that you need. Not just that, if you have an infected cell, it will help with the apoptosis. So please make sure you take vitamin D3 every day. I take it twice a day. I take it in the morning, I take it at night. Each soft gel is 5,000 units. So I'm taking 10,000 units a day. You know, some people take a little bit more than that based on their BMI, but you know, but the bottom line here is that taking D3 is really important for your health. Back to the news in the Muppet Show.
Whatever had happened had he been president now, under his presidency, he said Iran was broken under his control. Even before the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, there was a very dangerous escalatory moment under his watch, though, in 2019, when this US drone was shot down the Strait of Hormuz, and he ordered, then called off at last minute, as we understand it, a strike against Iran, followed by an attack on Saudi Arabia, on an oil facilities there, attributed to the Yemeni Houthis. It does go to show, though, how easily things can escalate.
Very, very much. Look,
You probably know Christopher for business cards, but did you know we also print that and that and that and that too? Yep.
very, very much. Look, I'm very critical of President Biden's policy, especially his blind support for Benjamin Netanyahu, because we know who's Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu is all about Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu has spent his political career trying to veto and undermine and destroy the notion of Palestinian state.
You can be a corrupted politician like Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm sure he's a U.S. asset. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's that Harvard connection, and there's there's, I believe, an MIT connection too. But there's definitely, he's an asset. But it's beyond that. It's not about. It's about having the right person in the position to be able to stop a catastrophe from happening, even if that individual may not be, lily white. All right. Benjamin Netanyahu is probably the only president that Israel will have to be able to get the job done and make sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. That means real war with Iran. If we do this patty cake stuff that's going on, Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon. And then the dynamics are going to be radically different. Radically different. Look at how we treat Pakistan. They're a nuclear power. It's a lot different now, even though they're a third world country. And Iran is a lot more sophisticated. Their people are more sophisticated than the Pakistanis. The whole region would go straight to hell if they had a nuclear weapon. The United States' biggest failure will be Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
But the truth is, many of the things that are happening now are basically took place on Trump's hands. I mean, let me give you an idea what we mean by that. He basically changed the calculus in Israel itself, Israel-Palestine. President Trump occupied East Jerusalem on a silver platter to Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump legalized illegal Jewish settlements in Palestinian lands. President Trump.
See, it keeps
exited.
on going back to not accepting the fact of this is a religious war. You can't deal with this from a Westphalian perspective. You can't look at this from, some sort of 100-year contemporary history. This is thousands of years that's been brewing here. And it's a battle between Esau and Jacob. Let them battle it out.
Violated the nuclear treaty that was signed by President Obama in 2015. In fact, I'm going to make a statement, and I hope I'm wrong. President Trump will historically be remembered as the president who allowed Iran to become a nuclear power. Iran now is closer than ever to developing the capacity to turn its nuclear.
Think about how the history of that just switched. It was the Trump administration that was more forceful with sanctions to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon. It was the Biden administration that took those sanctions off the table and allowed for money to flow back into Iran, especially with the oil trade. They eased up on the Biden administration eased up on Iran, and now we had October 7th. We didn't have October 7th during the Trump administration because we had heavy sanctions on them. It was the Biden administration and the Obama administration that created a sweetheart deal where there was a lot of corruption with this whole Iran and the United States. And it'll take years for us to unravel that. This guy, Professor Gerges, is saying that the instability in the region is because of the occupation, the settler occupation, and the prevention of the two-state solution and all this. No, it was the money being allowed to flow back into Iran for them to be able to project their power in the Middle East and also ease up on the restrictions for uranium enrichment. That's why they're going to move towards a nuclear power. And they're not that far away. And that happened under Obama's administration and Biden's administration, not Trump's administration. It was under Trump's administration where there was this Abrahamic Accord agreement to be able to create a more peaceful region. But it's aligned with the Saudis, not aligned with the Iranians. See, this is Islam versus Islam and Islam versus Judaism.
Weaponize this nuclear program. And this is as a direct result of a president who violated a treaty that has frozen Iran's nuclear capacity. So if President Trump cannot come and play this game, and the reason why
he can, because Trump was right.
Coalition doing what they're doing, because it was Trump who empowered it. It was Trump who told them you could do anything.
Mm-hmm. When you're watching the news and you start getting irritation coming out of your speakers and you start to have some scratchy throat because of that irritation, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges that I have. I have Manuka honey lozenges in a 21 count. It will neutralize pathogens because it's made from structural nanosilver. It'll help to soothe that irritation in your throat. Because I'm all at that through the news, we're going to get a lot of irritation in the next 2 weeks. Elderberry zinc silver lozenges in a 21 count also. Those two are my newest products on the store. I also have blueberry drops, which are smaller in a 100 count, and honey and lemon drops. Both of them are made from structural nanosilver. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get those lozenges. I also have green apple lozenges in a 20 count. So please go to the store and get the lozenges because mainstream media is going to be irritating you. Also go to my store and get the multivitamin. This will help to boost up your immune system and get you to, have proper cellular function. How? Well, minerals and vitamins act as cofactors on enzymes that if you don't have those cofactors, your enzymes will not be performing to its highest ability. So get this multivitamin. It's easy to digest, and you're going to have better enzymatic activity, and it'll help to boost up your immune system. Please go to the store and get this high quality multivitamin. It is really important, especially in the United States, to control your lipid profile. You want to increase your HDL and bring down your LDL. You want to bring down your triglycerides. You want to bring down your cholesterol. To help for you to control your lipid profile, please go and get my omega-3 supplement. And this will be part of that protocol to bring down that bad lipid profile. And through proper diet and exercise and taking omega-3, you're going to be able to bring up your HDL, you're going to bring down your LDL, you're going to bring down your triglycerides, you're going to be bringing down your cholesterol, right? And by doing that, you're going to reduce the chances of cardiovascular disease. All right. Now there are ways, and I will say it in a different video, there are ways to take certain types of supplements to actually reduce plaque buildup. Not just prevent plaque buildup, but reduce already developed plaque buildup. I've said it on many videos. I'll say it again on another
video. And as far as on the stalled nuclear deal, Iran nuclear deal, the Biden administration had sought to restore that agreement. Talks have stalled on both sides. They've stopped, but they're stopping short of saying that they've actually failed. You said you hope you're wrong, but you think that Iran will become a nuclear power. Do you think, is that now looking very likely? And how soon do you think that could be?
I think Iran is a nuclear power in progress. All Iran has to do is to make a decision to weaponize its nuclear program. It's a matter of weeks. And the big point I'm trying to make is that President Trump played a decisive role in allowing Iran to say, look, you violated the treaty, and I'm going to enrich uranium to a higher degree. And Iran has been doing so. And look, from an analytical point of view, I see always you put yourself in your in Iranians' shoe. If I were an Iranian leader, that's exactly what I would do. And Iran is a state.
You think that the Iranians are, the theocracy of Iran, are logical game theory actors, agents? Absolutely not. This is a religious battle that is happening. This guy is way off the mark on this. This ain't Vietnam, dude. This is totally different. Totally different. This is not the Western allies against the Nazis. This is not some war with China. This is not some war with Japan. This is something radically different.
We need to help. Doesn't matter whether you like the Iranian, they're not my cup of tea, of course. But Iran is a state that is, people think that, oh, look at the clerics, they have been expanding their power. People don't realize that Iran was more aggressive, more interventionist under the Shah. It was the Shah of Iran who started the nuclear program. It was the Shah of Iran who basically captured 3 United Arab Emirates islands. The Shah of Iran anointed himself with the American help as the sheriff of the Gulf. So when we think of Iran, I want your audience to think of Iran not in terms of the clerics. I want your audience to think of Iran as a state that has a vision, a worldview itself as a great power. And Iran, that's how the clerics, like the Shah of Iran, and whoever regime comes after the clerics, will continue to behave in this particular sense, in the sense of being really have the worldview of Iran as naturally positioned to play a great power role.
You, in your latest
At Cisco, we believe if we can imagine it, we can make it possible. In 2015, our newly appointed
you, in your latest book, you argue that the instability in the contemporary Middle East has been brought about partly by post-war US leaders getting it wrong, that they should have allowed more autonomy to develop, countries to develop their own political and economic status. Given what we can see at the moment happening in the Middle East, what do you think is at stake exactly? And how do you think that what you describe as mistakes of the past can be recalibrated to preserve a more stable future?
I mean, look, we're talking about Iran, right? We've been talking about Iran for half an hour. I want to think of Iran in 1953. My book, the most important case in my book is Iran, 1953. What happened in 1953? The Prime Minister of Iran in 1953, his name was Mohammad Mossadegh. Mohammad Mossadegh was a liberal Democrat, a person who believed in the rule of law, who believes in checks and balances, who was democratically elected, who believes in women's rights, who basically opened Iran to the world. He was a liberal. And guess what happened to Mohammad Mossadegh in August 1953? He was toppled by a joint operation by the CIA and M16. August 1953. Why? Because he dared to nationalize Iran's oil in order to really use the oil to modernize and industrialize Iran. That particular decision, you toppled one of the most. Mohammad Mossadegh was compared to Gandhi in terms of a peace forward-looking man. And guess
He's
what?
right about this. It was the U.S. getting involved because of oil and CIA operations and toppling regimes and all this stuff. He's right. We're all at fault. We're all at fault, and this is the reason why America will fall in World War III. The hegemonic power of the United States is going to be radically diminished. We'll win, quote, win. There's really no winner in World War III, but we'll be a victor of it. But we are going to be a diminished power, just like what happened after World War I with the UK. And that's the price that Americans will have to pay, because the American public didn't shut down that national security state that I've been saying, for 4 years to shut down. Now, many other people have been saying it too. The CIA and the FBI are out of control. The NSA are out of control. They need to be destroyed, totally dismantled. CIA gave you this.
Installed the Shah of Iran and who established an authoritarian, a brutal apparatus in Iran that ultimately led to what you and I talk about, the rise, the emergence of the clerics. This tells you in a nutshell how American foreign policy, and sadly the UK, whatever the United States goes, the UK follows, whether it was 1950s or 1960s or the invasion occupation of Iraq or now. It seems to me there's an umbilical cord between American foreign policy and British foreign policy. But my book, what I'm trying to do in my book is to show that at the end of World War II, the United States, and to a large extent the United Kingdom, instead of supporting post-colonial leaders who really had great visions for their countries, who wanted to establish organic states, who wanted to modernize, industrialize, and become independent. In fact, it penalized independent, assertive nationalist leaders like Musaddiq.
And the reason being is that the puppet masters that have the strings on the government and the intelligence agencies are big business. And those were the oil companies, the Rockefellers. They were the puppet masters to make sure that oil was flowing.
You think the unthinkable.
And just to put the current situation into context, Fawaz, finally, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says the Middle East faces its most dangerous conditions in 50 years. It's described its situation as incredibly volatile. How do you see it?
I mean, if you ask me, I've been teaching the modern Middle East for decades. The Middle East today is more volatile and more unstable than any moment in its modern history.
And when you look at a social system or a physical system, anything that has feedbacks and, you know, complexity, when there's that increase in entropy to go into a new state, a new physical state, a new structure, there's going to be a lot of turmoil. And then all of a sudden it stabilizes until it goes into another change of state, you know, from solid to liquid, from liquid to gas. All right. So we're seeing in the Middle East that there's a change of the system. Now I'm telling you, you don't have to agree with me, but I'm not wrong. The change of the system is a reduction in power of Esau and an increase in power of Jacob. And the borders are going to expand. And who's in the middle of this are the Palestinians. They don't have the right to the land. They will get Gaza. They're not going to be getting the West Bank. And oh, by the way, Israel is going to get bigger. It's going to have parts of the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and it's going to get parts of Jordan. And it's going to get parts of Lebanon and parts of Syria. So there's going to be a slight expansion of Israel. And the Dome of the Rock is going to be coming down. The Temple Mount's going to be rebuilt. And all of this is going to create this turmoil. But it's not that it's wrong for it to happen. What people like him need to realize is that the foreign policy theories are going to break down, because the foreign policy theories only work in a certain range of history, in a certain range of stability, and this rational actors concept. We're dealing with something that is very biblical, something that's very metaphysical, something that's Kabbalistic, something that's been brewing for thousands of years. And I don't care which international relations school you went, either in Cambridge or Tufts or Harvard or wherever, it doesn't matter. All of their theories are wrong. And this is the way it's going to play out. And there's going to be a lot of blood and destruction.
Tinderbox. It takes a spark to ignite a wider regional conflict. What we need is real de-escalation. And I hope, and I pray that Secretary Cameron, would really translate his, rhetoric in the past a few weeks into reality by taking independent action based on British interests, and does not really follow exactly what the Americans, always want the United Kingdom to do. My hope is for real de-escalation, ending the war in Gaza, having an international conference, recognizing a Palestinian state, welcoming a Palestinian state to the United Nations, two states living side by side in peace, an Israeli state and a Palestinian state on the West Bank and Gaza, with occupied East Jerusalem as its
West Bank and Gaza, and its capital being Jerusalem. See, they want to create the situation where the biblical borders don't go back to Israel, and that the Temple Mount doesn't go back to Israel. I'm telling you, this isn't, the Muslims aren't going to get what they want. And the more they kick and scream like a little kid, the more blood and destruction will ensue. Mark my words. Mark my words. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver soaps, because there's going to be so much blood that's being spilled in the Middle East. It's going to be all over the place, and you're going to have to wash your hands because, you know, since the 1953, the CIA created an operation that set this whole thing in motion with Iran going nuclear. Please get my structural nanosilver soaps. They're very high quality, and you know, they're in different scents. This one is in peppermint. This one is in charcoal tea tree. And I have also lavender and oatmeal. And I have one other a store that I can't remember which one it is. And that will help to neutralize pathogens, and they're extremely high quality. All right. So please go to the store and get the structural nanosilver soaps. And I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've created these deodorant bars, either in citrus or in peppermint, tea tree, lavender. It's for males and females. You use it every day as a deodorant, but because it's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, extremely high quality ingredients that are all natural. There's no aluminum in it. It's all natural from the Himalayas. What you want out of this bar is not only does it act as a deodorant, but it will help to detoxify your body. So please go to the store and get a couple of these deodorant bars to help to support your health and to get a high quality deodorant. So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and either get the citrus deodorant or the peppermint lavender tea tree deodorant for males and females. I also have created medical lecture series. It's on pulmonology, and I have created these 22 PDF files, and each PDF file of slides has a lecture to it that I explain that content. The 4 lectures that have been published so far for the module have been embryology, anatomy for the pulmonary system, hemoglobin, and pulmonary physiology. There's going to be 22 total lectures within that module. That module costs $50. So go to the store under classes and purchase the $50 pulmonology module. You'll get emailed to you a password for you to be able to log in, so you have access to the lectures that have been released. Each lecture has a slide deck that you can download that is in a PDF. And then you can see the video on my website. So please go to my store, purchase the pulmonary module, this pulmonology module, for $50, and you will have access to 22 PDF files and 22 lectures. Not all the lectures have been released. I will release a lecture a day, all right, all the way up to 22 lectures. And then once that's done, then I'm going to be going and doing another module on infectious diseases. So please, this way, the reason why to do it is a couple of reasons. One, this concept of citizen scientists. So you get more educated, so you can be able to discern what is being said in the mainstream media based on the knowledge that you're learning about medicine and science. All right. On top of that, you're reducing the power imbalance between you and your doctor. The doctor has a lot of power because of the knowledge that he or she has gained over the years. But if you start to increase your knowledge in medicine, you don't have to, you're reducing that power imbalance, and you don't have to rely so much on what the doctor's saying. You can question the doctor more. All right. Not only that, you'll be able to read a research paper and discern the validity of that research. So become a citizen scientist. Another reason to purchase the module is to challenge your brain, to be able to think in a different realm, and to be more knowledgeable in a different realm. Learn how to improve your health and your body, and to listen to it. Catch diseases early if possible. Another aspect to the module is that if you are a student in science or medicine and you need a refresher on certain concepts, to purchase the modules that I will be offering. Or if you have a child that is gifted, that is thinking about going into medicine, and let's say they're in high school, a perfect way to get their feet wet is to be purchasing these modules for your child, to have them go through so they get a better understanding of what they're getting into if they want to go down the medical route. You'll learn a lot. It is challenging, but you will get a lot out of it for only $50. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the health supplement, the health supplements that I offer, and purchase the pulmonology module that I have put up on the website. And each day for a series of couple weeks, you're going to see a new lecture up there, and you're going to be able to have access to that video and have access to those PowerPoints. And you'll get this password to be able to log into the class. Thank you for supporting my work. And let me just finish what they were going to say here, and then we'll close it down for a P&N.
By side in peace, genuine reconciliation between the Jewish community in Israel and the Palestinian Arab community in Palestine.
It's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio.
So thank you for listening. I'll do another show. I'm scheduled to have something with John Hogue tonight, so you'll be seeing that perhaps tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.